Hi. I did say I would do a video this week, and I'm trying to stick to that, although I've had a bit of running around to do the last 2 days. And yeah, I look really, it's not fat. Anyway, I'm waiting for some more tests, which is what I'm gonna talk about today. The ring thing has not been sorted, so I'm just gonna buy a new one hopefully this weekend, and then it'll get better. Sorry about the videos. Okay, I'm going to try and be succinct and not go into too much detail about certain things, but 3 years ago, 3 and a bit years ago, my health, it was already not good, but it changed drastically, and reading upon the cause of what now is the most agreeable diagnosis amongst the neurologist, rheumatologist, pain specialist, etc. I haven't ever felt anything like it. And when I was given the diagnosis late, I think 23, it wasn't 24, it was late 2023, of fibromyalgia, I just didn't feel that was the answer. So I kept looking, because I've been in the emergency room several times, severe abdominal issues. There was a 3-month period where I couldn't eat because every time I even had a tiny bit of food, my abdomen would swell and actually hurt when I took in more food. So I had to either eat really small. I ate some veggies, we kind of looked into what foods would kind of help dissipate that, and we got that sorted. So I got back to eating my foods. I also didn't drink coffee for about 6 months because I did think that coffee was the instigator. I'm back to drinking coffee almost daily. I have had a day I have had a coffee every day this week, sorry. I just can't not have it. So look, there are days every now and then that I will not drink it because I've either forgotten to have it, or I'm too busy, I don't need it, etc. I used to have I went from 4 in my young years, when I was working, to 3 when I was a young mum, to 2 when I was working a bit older, to now 1, and it's either around 11ish. It's never before that now, because I find that if I have it any earlier than that or first thing in the morning, it actually makes me sick. So I wait. So it's either 11ish or about 3:30. They're the times that seem to work for me best, where it doesn't have a negative effect on me. But it's been really difficult to put into words the pain, and the cause of fibromyalgia, they say, is a significant physical, emotional, traumatic event. And yes, I did go through that. My mum passed away, but it was a lot of things leading up to her passing away. Her decline from when she went from being independent in her own house to in a care home, and the rapid, and I mean rapid, decline, rapid isn't even the word, decline when she went into care. I still struggle to come to terms with that. It wasn't even 12 months. So, when she was independent, we were worried that she was going to injure herself, and that's why she was moved to a care home. So there was reasons behind it, because apparently she had been falling with my stepfather, but he never advised us. So that is one of the reasons why she got moved. However, going from being able to take her to a pub lunch, drinking a Moscato, which was one of her favourite beverages, to not even 3-4 months later, her not being able to hold a coffee cup and enjoy a cup of coffee. Because she had swallowing issues. So I actually have the photos of when she's standing at the front of her house when she sold it, and not even several months later, and just immobile, completely immobile. So there was a lot of stress. Also, the relationship I had with my mum, her death, obviously I've had to learn to kind of deal with those issues on my own. So there's a lot of mixed emotions as well, emotionally, and that too. So I can definitely pinpoint the start of this phase, because I've had myalgia, encephalitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, or as the Americans call it, chronic fatigue immune dysfunction syndrome, which I much prefer than what we term it, for over 28 years. I was diagnosed 6 months after my youngest was born, and I was very, very fortunate. I had a good GP who listened to me, took in the information I provided him. We did a heap of blood tests, some other tests, and then it was ruled out. And it could have been Lyme disease, or it could still be, but Australia doesn't test for Lyme disease, and if I want to get tested for Lyme disease, I don't have the money to do that, and I think I even have to go overseas, which I definitely never had the money to do that. So, but I don't know. I unless I go to an expert in Lyme disease, it'll be CFS. So I've always been unwell, and I've tried to manage day to day. I've tried to work when I can. I was even working when my mum was going through this phase, and I was visiting her. The round trip from where I lived to where she was in her care home was 3 hours. So I'd go straight after work. I wouldn't probably come home until 9-10 o'clock at night, then get up for work. And that's, for an ADHD, autistic, chronically ill person, is not a good scenario. Anyway, so I've done a whole lot of tests. I've had 3 MRIs, I've had a CT scan, I've had multiple blood tests, and the neurologist has definitively just basically explained and been able to have a conversation with me, unlike the first neurologist who just wrote me off and didn't want to engage in a conversation with me, about, yes, it's fibromyalgia. We'll keep an eye on it, because there are some studies that people that develop fibromyalgia can also develop multiple sclerosis at a similar kind of timing. So he's saying that the spots I have in my brain are basically aging spots. So nothing really, they're not demyelination, which is what they were first called, which is why I've had 2 MRIs since, because the first MRI technician said that was actually demyelination. But yeah, so he's going to keep an eye on it. So I'm going to have regular visits with him and do probably annual MRIs, just to make sure that nothing else pops up. But to describe the symptoms of fibromyalgia, I just can't. It affects so much. As I said, abdominal issues, leg pain, chest pain, lower back pain. My lower back pain, that was one of the first indicators that something had changed, was my lower back pain was always an issue, but I was always manageable. But it got to a point where there were days where I couldn't even walk. I couldn't stand up because it was that painful. And I've even stopped my baking because I know that if I stand up and bake, I'm going to be in awful pain the next day. And this throat thing is also a fibromyalgia thing, because I get the coughs at night. So it's not been fun, but I'm glad that the prognosis is kind of understood now. About 6 weeks ago, I ended up in the emergency room, unable to walk and in excruciating pain again. So that's like literally 4 visits within 3 years in the emergency room, and you're talking to someone who's had a chronic illness before that, who hardly visited the emergency room of a hospital. So it's, yeah, the last time I visited the emergency room was several years ago when I had an issue with my gallbladder and it got removed. So it's definitely changed things, but the emergency doctor was really, really good. She was lovely. She was about to bawl her eyes out when I was telling her everything that was wrong with me, and I was like, no, please don't, because I'd already had a cry in the emergency room in my big mushroom pillow, and I'm like, if she starts shedding a tear, I'm not going to be able to stop. So I kind of just had a joke, just tried to say something to lighten the mood so that no tears were shed. But she just said, you were in the right place. You did the right thing. You needed to come here. And I suppose her thinking is that if anything more serious had happened, I was where medical attention was. The pain meds that I have at home were nowhere near enough to manage the pain that I was in. So, and I'll just give you an example of what I mean. So I've been taking THC oil now pretty much for about that time since my lower back pain increased in pain. THC oil and some other medications. I've dropped most of the medications except for one, which helps me, half a tablet of this medication helps me fall asleep, and then the THC oil keeps me asleep most of the time. Not all the time, still has issues. So when it has issues, I wait an hour and a half, because obviously I do that anyway because I can't sleep, and then I'd take Panadeine Forte. It does nothing. Like, I take if I take Panadeine Forte, it's 1,000 milligrams, so 2 500 milligram tablets. It literally does nothing to stem the pain. So yeah, so that's what I mean by I didn't have strong enough meds. So the emergency doctor has given me something else that I still haven't followed up. I'm getting the script, but I'll get that this weekend, and I only take one of those, and with Nurofen and Panadol. And because when I did that at the hospital, it had a good outcome, and I wasn't drowsy, like drug drowsy, like I've tried Lyrica. I can't take that because that just makes me feel like I'm off my face, and I just can't even think. And it's also one of the reasons why I went down the ADHD route. It's not because I was sick, and you don't, just because you've got fibromyalgia doesn't mean you've got ADHD, and just because you got ADHD doesn't mean you've got fibromyalgia. You have to have ADHD for the medication to work. But what I read was a scientific research article that talked about how ADHD meds, if diagnosed ADHD, help with chronic pain. And and I read this about a year ago, or actually longer, because I was diagnosed at the similar time to the fibromyalgia. And they basically, in that research, had a 30% improved rate in people. So 30 out of the people that they tested, 30% had an improved pain response when they were taking the ADHD meds. So yeah, and when I take my ADHD meds, that absolutely do help. But the problem is it's a vicious circle, because if I don't sleep and I don't wake up early enough to take them, because I really should take the first 2 by 10:30 and then the next 2 by 2:30, even though some people would still say that's too late, but that's 9:30, 1:30, 10:30, 2:30. Anything later, but if I need to do something, I'll just take my two tablets. So I take 2 and 2. Most people would take 3 and 2 or 3 and 3, but 3 and 2 is too much for me, so I take 2 and 2. And probably because I take them later, I've actually found that it works. So I'm going to wrap this up because I've gone way over 10 minutes. But my point is that if I take them regularly, they do help stabilize the pain, but I can't take them regularly because because my body is just pinging all night, like electric signals like you wouldn't believe, spasms, tingling, just really weird sensations that, as I said, can't put into words. So that's where my health is at. That's what's been happening with me for the last 3 years. It's also got to a point, I had a really good job a few months ago, but it got to the point where I was in too much pain, couldn't get up again in the morning, and I'm talking 10 o'clock starts, I'm not talking about 6 o'clock starts. I still couldn't get up in the morning to get there on time, so I called it quits, and I just have to accept the fact that I can't do what I want to do sometimes, which, you know, I like working. I feel like I'm contributing something when I'm working, but I can't. As all my specialists and medical practitioners say, my health is a very complex matter, which it is, and working just exacerbates it. So yes, I have my busy days, but to my own timetable, not to someone else's, and I think that makes a difference as well. So I will wrap this up. Thank you for watching, following, and supporting. I will get the ring thing by the next one. And the next one, I'm going to talk about traffic because it's driving me freaking nuts. All right. Have a good day. Have a good week. Thank you. Bye.